Hello and welcome to the COING Podcast. In today's episode, I'll be talking to David Parrish, a specialist creative and a digital industries business coach. Okay then, David, thank you so much for joining us in our podcast today. We really appreciate you taking out the time. So if you could please give our audience a bit of an introduction for people who may not be aware of you and what you do. Could you tell our audience a little bit about yourself?
Okay, my name is David Parrish. I'm based in the UK, but I work internationally, both on the ground and online. And my speciality is to help creative people to become smarter with business. So I work in the creative industries, sometimes called the creative and cultural industries, sometimes called the creative and digital industries. But basically, it's as a business advisor, helping individual businesses as an advisor, coach, and mentor. But I also speak at conferences about creative entrepreneurship. I deliver training workshops on business issues for creative enterprises, such as leadership, marketing, finance, business growth. And I've written a couple of books, especially for creative entrepreneurs, to help them to become smarter with business. And I can talk about those a bit later on. So that's me. I work independently around the world, helping creative people to become more successful.
That's amazing, David. So I already know that about you, and I'm really happy that our audience will get to know that about you as well, and to get to know what creative entrepreneurship is. So I'd like to start off with what in your mind or in your experience would you say creative entrepreneurship is, and how can we connect the two together, creativity and entrepreneurship?
Okay, I guess there are two different angles. The main angle I take is that I work in what's called the creative industries. So that's a term that's used and means slightly different things to different people. But it's the creative industries relates to those businesses that have creativity at their heart. Often you might describe it as artistic creativity of some kind. So we're thinking then about designers, broadcasters, video makers, writers, dancers, authors, all those creative kind of professions that can be described as the creative industries, which is a term that was coined in the UK around 96, 97. And, it's become adopted with slightly different nuances in different countries around the world. So when I talk about creative entrepreneurship, I'm mainly talking about helping people in the creative industries to become better entrepreneurs. But I think that creativity happens in all kinds of entrepreneurship. So if you're an entrepreneur working in manufacturing, in transport, in healthcare, in banking, then there is also creativity. It's not artistic creativity that those people are using, but it's nevertheless a different kind, a wider kind of creativity, which you might call ingenuity or problem solving, etc. So I think that you could take two different definitions or views about creative entrepreneurship. Entrepreneurship is necessarily creative wherever you're working, but I'm talking mainly about the creative industries where the creativity is artistic in some way, and then I help people to combine that with smart business thinking to achieve the success that they want.
So I agree that with any business, you need a dose of creativity, right? You need creativity to successfully solve problems or to think of new ideas. So what about when it comes to artists that are also already, artistic and creative, and they also need the creativity for their business? But I remember in our conversation prior to today, you mentioned something about a lot of artistic people or artists feeling that they're selling out when they involve business. When they involve the business aspect within, their talents, or when they're trying to market themselves as an artist. So how do you advise people that feel this way, and how can they not feel that way while still succeeding in their own industry without feeling that they've sold out?
Well, what I find is that, as I travel around the world working with creative businesses, is that they're all amazing in terms of their creativity in the studio, whether it's a dance studio, a design studio, broadcasting, publishing, music, whatever. But they're not necessarily as creative when they move into the business office. Mm-hmm. And I think that there is a general assumption that business is boring, that creativity is about the art, and that business techniques and methods are boring, standard. And ironically, then you get a situation often where creative people, or people who are creative in the studio, become actually kind of uncreative or conservative or regular in the way that they do business, because they think that creativity is only for the studio and it can't be applied to things like marketing, to finance, which can be creative in legitimate ways, and to business partnerships, to organizational structures, to leadership, etc. I think there's a tremendous amount of creativity that happens in the business office. Even though it might not be called artistic creativity, it is nevertheless that wider ingenuity, problem solving, thinking outside the box, whatever cliche you want to use. When it comes to your question about artists and selling out, first of all, I have to say that within the creative industries, there's a whole spectrum of different kinds of businesses, different sizes and shapes of business, and different attitudes towards business. Mm-hmm. So the creative industries is such a wide spectrum that it covers everything from, at the one end, the individual artist who is passionate about their art, but not really convinced about business, right through a huge spectrum to like the Disney Corporation at the other end, which is a creative enterprise. Absolutely. The films they make are absolutely creative. And yet, they don't have any qualms about the business side of things. They are, proud to be arch capitalists. And so we can't say that all creative people have a hesitancy about business. Mm-hmm. But I think certainly at the smaller end, where people are working individually in arts and crafts, then oftentimes people see it as, and maybe begin as a hobby, and then they try to, sell their stuff and make some money out of it. So there's somewhere between the hobby and a commercial business. And I think it's those people in particular that have sometimes some problems with the business side of things. And I can understand why, because if they go along to a regular kind of business advisor, he or she might say to them, like, just give up doing your ceramics. You'll never make any money out of it. Your jewelry is never going to be profitable. Forget your sculpture, your singing, whatever. It's just not commercially viable. You can do it as a hobby, but get a proper job. And so I think a lot of the business advice is aimed at regular businesses with, predictable business models, and is not sympathetic at all to people who are passionate about their creative art. I think I'm different because I have more of an empathy with artists. I understand how important it is to them, and that they don't want to change the nature of their art. I also understand their reluctance to take regular business advice because it might push them into doing something they don't want to do in order to make more money. So I can work with them effectively. And I say to them that there doesn't have to be a contradiction between being sort of pure, the starving artist, or being commercially successful.
Mm.
Sometimes people switch from one to the other by selling out, by saying, I'm not going to do my abstract paintings anymore. I'm just going to do commercial illustration for a company. And then they can make a living, but they've changed the nature of what they do. I often find that the solution when I'm giving business advice is for them to find different markets. So typically, and I can think of a few examples where an artist might say, I love doing my art, my abstract paintings, for example, but in my city, my friends, my family, they support me in a sense, but they don't want to buy my art. And people around here, just don't want to buy or don't want to buy at a decent price. Mm. And so they come to me as a marketing consultant. And I think that they expect me to bring out my briefcase, put my hand in and get a handful of magic dust and sprinkle my magic dust onto their paintings so that all of a sudden people around here in their locality, want to buy it and pay thousands of dollars or pounds for it. But unfortunately, I don't have such magic dust. And my approach to marketing is different anyway. It isn't about, not so much emphasizing sort of better sales techniques or blurb, but actually making sure that the business is properly aligned to the right markets. Mm-hmm. So I might say, well, if people around here don't want to buy at the right price, then don't sell to people around here. Find another city, find another location, find a community online where people appreciate your work and are prepared to pay for it. So I had a conversation very much like this, with a woman artist who actually wasn't successful in her own city, but then took her art to New York, where it was much appreciated. In the art galleries of New York amongst a different clientele. I think it was also an attraction that she was British in the USA. So she was a foreigner with, and a little bit exotic because of that. And so she didn't have to sell out by changing the nature of her abstract art. She just had to put herself in the right marketplace. Mm-hmm. And that's what I call strategic marketing. It's about getting the big picture, the big issues right, so that when you do that, you don't have to do much operational marketing or marketing communication. You don't have to twist people's arms. You don't have to shout at people. You don't have to hammer them with emails and social media posts, because there is a natural fit. So yes, at one end of the creative industries, there might be a reluctance to get into business because people feel that they're going to be pushed into doing something they don't want to do. But there are solutions to it, and it's often about finding the right markets.
Well, I think that's, a very good approach, especially when it comes to creativity. I think that usually what you mentioned earlier, that creatives usually don't like to take business advice, because I think that there's a thin line between business advice and creativity, and they might collide in their minds. I think that a lot of business coaches or agencies that handle, business strategies or marketing strategies, they don't really take into account the more creative jobs. They kind of have an all approach to all industries. And I think creative people don't really like that, as they're already creative and their work is very unique to them. It's not just another marketing agency. Although these industries are also creative, it's a bit different when it comes to actual art, right? So a lot of these artists doing the work that they do, they feel that they need a specific and unique approach to their artwork as well. So I think that's maybe where this, hesitation comes from in their minds. Would you agree?
Absolutely. And, I think it brings to mind a project I did over a few years, between 2017, 2019 in the Republic of Ireland in County Donegal. And that was to help creative businesses of different kinds. Some were digital businesses, a digital newspaper, web designers, etc. but also a certain number of people working in arts and crafts. And I think that what happens there when people take regular business advice is that the advisor only has one business model in their mind, which is to sell more stuff. So somebody might be making handmade cards or small items of jewelry or other kinds of crafts or paintings or prints. And the advisor will instantly sort of switch into this, shall we say, industrialized way of thinking. And it's to say, well, you need to produce more so that you can sell more and make more money. And that pushes people into what I call this sort of mini industrialization. And it's about just, churning out more stuff. But it's often not the right answer, both in terms of just business, but also in terms of lifestyle. And so there are alternative approaches which can be even more successful. In other words, instead of just creating more and more cheap jewelry at the low price end, and then trying to find the outlets for it, the customers for it, and working every hour that God sends, a jeweler can say, actually, I'm going to make more special, more expensive, bespoke jewelry and serve only a limited market of people who are prepared to pay a lot of money. And so it's a very different approach. And that approach can actually be more profitable, and it suits their lifestyle more, because they don't want to be just churning out stuff in a mini factory. They want to be working at the highest level of creativity, creating new pieces and serving an audience that appreciates them, because that's important too, to have customers who love what you do, who give you positive feedback, who adore you. Who doesn't like that?
I think everyone, especially artists, right? They like their creativity and the things that they create to be actually liked, obviously. And they want people to enjoy it. They don't really want to be, I'm just making an assumption. I doubt that any artist really wants to be stuck in their studio or at home, wherever they create, making the 50 or 1,000 versions of the same bracelet or pot or whatever painting. I think that they want to express their uniqueness even with the work that they do, so that every piece is unique in some way. They're not a factory, as you said.
Exactly. And I think the positive feedback they get from clients is, it's good for the ego, of course, and we all like that, but it means that they are more close to the customer. And that has all kinds of benefits. Whereas if you go along what I call the mini industrialization route, you're selling through retailers and you never actually see the people who buy your stuff. You're just sending out parcels to shops who then sell it to customers. The customer never meets the artist, and the artist never meets the customer. So in that sense, they're working in isolation, and they can't get the positive feedback they need, or indeed the negative feedback. And this isn't just about ego. This is about understanding what customers like and maybe then making adaptations within your artistic mission. And the other point is that when artists decide not to industrialize, not to just send out thousands to shops and retailers, but to work from their studio and have a more personal relationship with the customers who love them, they can really get that dialogue going. They can see the feedback. They can listen to customers about what it is they like. A customer might say, I love your prints, but have you thought about framing them? Because I'd rather pay for you to frame them and buy it framed than frame it myself. And so then an artist, might offer that additional service. But also it adds value for the consumer, the customer. because the consumer doesn't just go home and put a nice print on their wall. They can say to their friends when they admire the print on the wall, yes, and I met the artist.
Yeah,
And
that's a good point. That's a
she
great
was
point.
lovely. She was lovely. I went to her studio when I was in County Donegal on holiday. And they're buying a real experience as well as a product. And increasingly, consumers want to buy experiences. And so that relationship, that more direct relationship with the artist adds value because people are buying a relationship, a story, and what I call show-off value. Because there's a huge difference, if somebody comes to your home, Natalia, and says, I love the print on the wall. And you could say, yeah, it's nice, isn't it? I spent a few $100s on it. End of
And I
story.
met the artist.
But if you start then saying, I met the artist because I was on holiday or I was traveling for work, I met the artist, I went to his or her studio, I started to understand their inspiration. And let me tell you about the painting because, it relates to the ancient folklore of Ireland, and this represents that. And the artist was telling me that the paper they use and the paint they use, and you go on then for hours showing off, to your friends about this painting. So you're buying a whole bundle of value, which is the experience and the connection. And I think that's where businesses of the type we're talking about actually benefit from being smaller and of higher quality. And, size isn't everything. It's not just about the number of units you sell, because you're probably selling them very unprofitably or with minimal profit. That's what supermarkets do when they sell beans. They make 1 cent profit on every tin of beans, but they shift a lot of them. You can do that if you want, but I don't think that's the right business to be in if you're an artist, because you want to concentrate on quality. So instead of being a supermarket selling beans, you're more akin to the Rolls-Royce car company.
Mm-hmm.
They make huge profits. Everybody wants a Rolls-Royce. Rich people buy them, but there's a process, and Rolls-Royces are valued partly because they're so rare, because they're expensive. And I think, therefore, that artists need to do the opposite of that industrialization that they are pushed into by regular business advisors, and think about quality, think about their creativity and their lifestyle, but also offering a much better and much more expensive experience and product to a smaller number of dedicated customers who come back time after time. I think that's a much more viable model, and it fits in more with the artist's lifestyle.
I would agree completely, and that's a great comparison with the Rolls-Royce. I think that now, even more so with the hyper-production of so many things, that I think more and more people are learning to appreciate unique work more often than was in the past. And I think that the online digital platforms that we have available to us now can help artists, also not regular, but I mean like consumers in general, looking for unique art, connect with the artist easier. So for example, if I were to want to buy a specific print, I could easily find an artist all the way from Brazil, for example, no matter where I am. And I could have an even bigger, wow factor when I tell my friends, oh, this artist from Brazil, and I communicated with them through Instagram or whichever platform I happen to come across them. So would you say that digital world, or online, the internet has helped artists and creative people expand their markets and expand their opportunities, as well as consumers? Do you think that it's easier today with all of the things that we have, or has it made it less easier? What do you think about that?
Well, certainly communication is easier. And like you say, nowadays you can go on Instagram, find an artist you like in Brazil, buy a piece of their work, have a little chat with them. And that happens in the way you've just described. And, that was not really possible before social media, and certainly not, before the internet. So clearly communication has more potential. I think it's how we use it that matters. And again, some people will use it, but they will still have that industrial model in their mind of just selling lots of units and not communicating particularly with the customer. So again, it's a means of communication which has fantastic potential and amazing reach worldwide. You can contact anybody.
Exactly.
Almost. But I think we need an extra layer to that. We need then to decide how to use it. And again, there's still that choice between just selling units, pumping out units and selling them to people, even if they're on social media, and saying, there you go, there's your tin of beans, pay us the money, goodbye. On the one hand, or the more Rolls-Royce approach, which is to say, I'm glad you've contacted me. You've mentioned this piece of art that you saw, but do you realize I do this other kind of art as well? Please tell me what you prefer. Let me tell you a bit about my work. Creating that dialogue so that you get, better, higher quality of communication. And probably at the end of it, the customer will buy 3 items instead of 1. And so I think sometimes we just need to slow down and think about quality instead of quantity. Take time with these conversations, these relationships, so
even
that we
online.
better understand, even online. Yeah, even online. It's I wouldn't say it's more difficult online. I don't think it is. I think we have to be more careful and perhaps more skillful. It's certainly easier online to be dismissive and quick. People place an order, you send out the order, and that's it. And then a follow-up email says, dear customer, thank you. It's very impersonal. It's easier to be impersonal and to be rapid and of a lower quality of communication, I think. I've just ordered some stuff from Amazon before I came online here. And, I don't expect them to have a chat with me. It's very quick and very instant, and it's efficient. But I think that what consumers increasingly want is a bit more respect. And I don't mind if I'm just buying some stuff off Amazon, but if I'm buying a work of art, I would appreciate, I'm in a different mood. It's a different kind of purchase. And I would certainly appreciate, some kind of conversation with the artist, whether it's in person or online. I think in person, if you're working in your studio as an artist, somebody comes into the studio, then you're going to be friendly, you're going to have a chat, you might take a few minutes or sometimes an hour, having a good chat with them, because it would be rude to just say, give us your money and go, give us your money.
Yeah, hopefully we wouldn't come across that.
No, and it would be virtually impossible to do that in person, face to face. But I think it's very easy to do that online.
Just a bunch of pixels.
Yeah, and an order comes in to your online shop, and you send the order out with an invoice, and that's it. And that's it's efficient, but it's a bit rude. Whereas the best artists I know will actually write a handmade card, a handwritten card, and and say, dear Natalia, lovely to hear from you. It's a fascinating, that we're communicating over this distance. Please tell your friends, get in touch if you have any queries, and good luck. I really hope you enjoy the product. That might take 5 minutes, or maybe 10 minutes if you think carefully about what you're going to write. Find a nice card, handwrite it. And a lot of people don't want to do that because they're in this industrialization model. They think they should be like Amazon and just depersonalize everything. Actually we need to do the opposite if we're dealing with art and experiences and relationships.
Yeah, I agree. Amazon already exists, and if we're creating something personally, we're creating it as an artist. I think that we shouldn't take that approach, but that's just, my opinion. But I totally agree with you on that one. So considering the digital world and that we've just mentioned that, there are then meaning a lot more artists online, and there's a lot more content to consume online. So how can specific people that are talented and the artists, how can they gain a competitive advantage in such, a field industry now, because everyone has access to the internet today almost, and everyone's got access to Instagram. Anyone can easily open up an Etsy shop or just sell their stuff on Instagram. So how can some person get a competitive edge and competitive advantage over all the other millions of their fellow artists?
Well, it's a good question. There are answers. I'll come to an answer, but just to underline what you're saying, my background is in the book trade. My first enterprise was a bookshop, then I worked in book publishing, then book distribution. And in those days, way back in the last century, which makes me sound really old, but it wasn't really that long ago, there were relatively few publishers and relatively few books to buy, still thousands and thousands. But if you were an author and you wanted to have a book published, you had to go to one of these publishers, and then they chose the best and they published, the few that they wanted to do. Nowadays, everybody can be an author. Anybody can publish a book and put it on Amazon. And
you don't even need to print it anymore.
And you don't even need to print it. Yeah. So, I could go on just about the business model. Working in publishing, we had to decide how many books to print. And it's a big decision, because you get a cheaper unit price the more you print, but if you print too many and they don't sell, you lose money. Nowadays with digital printing, that doesn't really apply. So the whole world has changed in terms of publishing, but the point is that now anybody can write a book, and that's very democratic, and that's very exciting and very appealing. But it also means that you're competing not with hundreds of other authors, but millions of other authors. And the consumer is confused by the amount of choice, because, if you just fancy reading a book and buying a book, then in the old days, you would go to a bookshop, you would have a choice, even then, of hundreds or perhaps thousands. Now you have a choice of millions. So it's all very confusing. It is exciting because in theory, you can sit in your back bedroom, write your novel, and people all over the world will buy it, but it doesn't always happen that way. And in reality, we have to come back to understanding marketing. And I think that's about finding your own tribe, your own niche, your own followers. And to do that, it isn't just about having a smart online shop or going on Etsy. It's about community. It's about people who know of you or get to know about you, who respect you as an author or whatever you are, and then become, then positively choose you amongst lots of other options. So again, I think that it's tempting to just say, I'm going to put it on Etsy, and Etsy must get, millions of views every day, and therefore I'm bound to sell stuff. And it might work, it might not. The other way is to say, I know my community. I'm going to send the right messages to the right people. I'm going to focus on trying to sell to this group of artists or people who are passionate about science fiction or whatever. And to do that, you need to do more than just put your book on Amazon or your crafts on Etsy. You need to engage in dialogue. You might need to do talks. You might need to visit places. You might need to just get involved in that community in some way. And that's what I see the best marketers online doing?
Okay, so you would advise people to first find their niche and to find their tribe, right? As best as they can, online or in real life. So to find the proper people to market to and to communicate with and to grow their story and their brands with.
Yeah, I think, one of my questions as a business advisor is, and it sounds like a rude question, but it's not, it's to ask, okay, you've written a novel, who are you going to sell it to? Who's going to buy it?
It's not rude. I wouldn't say that's a rude question.
Well, it depends how you say it. It can, depends how you say it, I suppose. I'm not going to say who the hell's going to buy this. I'm asking more respectfully, which is, who is your market? Mm-hmm. And I remember distinctly many years ago when I used to do training courses for would-be publishers. Mm-hmm. And in this group in London, there were 20 people for a weekend training course. And there was a guy who'd written a novel, and it was one of the questions we were asking each other, within the workshop. And I said to him, who's, great, you've written a novel, who's going to buy it? And he said, oh, everybody.
Everybody. Okay.
And I said, well, yeah, I hope so. But tell me, is it more suitable? Do you think you're going to get more customers from women rather than men? Or, is it something that particulars people who like a particular genre would go for? Or do you think that old people or young people will buy it more? And he said, oh, everybody. And it frightened me, because what do you specifically do tomorrow if you believe everybody will buy it? You might as well just go on the street with leaflets and ask random people if you think that everybody's going to buy it. And at the same workshop, there was a guy who was a retired social worker, and he'd written a book for social workers about this horrible, issue of child abuse. It was a professional book. It was not a novel. It was a manual for professionals. And I asked him the same question, who's going to buy your book? Mm-hmm. And he gave me the best answer I've ever had, really, which was, well, in this country, the UK, there are 4,000 specialist social workers who deal with child abuse in social services, in the police, etc. And they work in 192 different local authorities. And I've got the name and address of every specialist social worker in every local authority, and from a database. That's and I know because there are 4,000 of them, I'm going to print 4,000 books. That's what I call precision marketing. It's not about the quantity. It's not about ambition or hope or positive thinking. It's about a precise match between what you're doing and the customers. So
that's very important.
That's an extreme example, but in the middle of that, I think most people are somewhere in the middle of that spectrum, and they find that, yeah, despite their hopes, that it's a particular group of people who like what they do, and they should nurture those people and make them into a tribe. Or it might be that they come from that tribe, they're already part of that community, and then they write a book or create some art, so they have a ready-made audience who likes them and knows them. So one example is a guy who came on one of my workshops in Derbyshire in England, and he was it's called Rob Kinsey. I've written about him. It's public knowledge. He's an artist, and he's also fanatical about the sport of motocross, which is, riding motorbikes over rough terrain and breaking your bones. And, he's broken all the bones in his body, as a younger man doing that. He's passionate about motocross, and he started doing some paintings of motocross personalities, people riding bikes, action paintings, shall we say. He came on my workshop saying that he thought he ought to diversify and start doing other paintings, perhaps of landscapes, perhaps of people, etc. But in the end, at the end of my workshop, he decided, no, I already am part of this community. I know motocross better than any other artist. I know people in the motocross community. And he decided not to diversify, but to focus on motocross painting. And within a year, he was artist in residence at some motocross event. He was feted at some world championships and sold loads of his paintings because he was one of them. It was
his thing.
It was his domain, his realm. He had a monopoly basically as an artist in that community. So it made sense for him. And, that's how he achieved his success. And he didn't have to do paintings he didn't want. He was working all the time, painting motocross stuff. And that's what he loved to do. And talking with motocross people who were buying his art, loving him, and building up that community he already had in terms of being an artist.
Yeah, so it's very important to find what you're good at and what you enjoy, and finding the right people to market that to, and to not have to, as you said, twist your arm, your leg, and change yourself entirely to adapt to the market, as you're not a factory, as you gave a good example. You're still an artist, and you should still remain unique and provide a unique experience for every one of your customers, and for yourself included with your work.
Yeah, you exactly. And, in summary, you don't have to change yourself, and you don't have to change the customer. When you talk then, I'm thinking of the phrases we use about twisting people's arms.
Yeah.
It's
not a very nice phrase to imagine.
Not really. And I think if marketing involves twisting people's arms to get them to buy your stuff, you're dealing with the wrong kind of customer.
Yeah.
And I think that's
good point.
Whereas we want to find the customers where we don't need to twist their arms, where they're actually running at us with money, and a big hug, and saying, where have you been all my life? And just throwing money at us and buying everything we want.
With untwisted arms, yes.
Yeah, and if you have to twist an arm in any sense, whether it's physical or metaphorical, I think it's the wrong kind of marketing, because you're probably dealing with the wrong kind of customers. If you're having to trick them, talk at them, shout at them, persuade them, offer them discounts, beg them, all these things are not only undignified, but an indication, in my view, that you're probably dealing with the wrong kind of customer.
You're probably doing something wrong if you have to go through all of these additional steps to get someone to buy what you're selling. I agree. I think that's a great point. So David, what do you think about the digital trends with the creative industry in the future? Where do you see it all heading? And in your experience and all of your experience together, where do you see the future of creativity in the digital world, and offline as well, using all the tools that we have with us today?
I think there are various responses to that. I work, as I mentioned, in the creative industries. Sometimes it's called creative and digital industries, because a lot of my clients as a business advisor are already working digitally. They might be web designers, they might be making videos, they might be doing commercial illustration, on their iPads. So they might be making TV adverts or computer games or apps. So their work from the beginning is digital. And I think that's, that's a huge area of expansion. That's the way the world is going. So a lot of businesses are fundamentally digital in what they do. And, we all use apps, we use computer games, we go to websites, we're all immersed in this digital world. So it's big, it's huge, and it's growing. So there's lots of businesses in there, lots of consumers. And yeah, that's the nature of society. I think On the other hand, that's what makes it special if you get a handwritten letter from your friend.
Yeah. True, very true.
Because nowadays we don't do that. I still send some Christmas cards every Christmas. I used to send a lot when it was the normal thing to do. Now it's less normal, and most of my messages are digital, in emails or whatever. But I still make a point of sending some, handwritten cards in the post with stamps on.
That's lovely. I don't remember the last time I've gotten a letter in the post with an actual stamp. I've forgotten what they look like.
I know it's, but the point is that they now become special because I think for various reasons, because it's unusual. We're immersed in this digital world. We're receiving hundreds of emails every day. Christmas time, we receive thousands of emails saying Happy Christmas from companies we don't even know why they're contacting us. And even our friends will probably send us a fairly standard Christmas message. So to get a card is, it strikes you because it's unusual, but also because somebody has bothered to take the time. And, we know that people who send out this Christmas email to all their customers that says, "Dear customer, we wish you a happy Christmas."
Yeah, it's gotten old now. I don't think anyone falls for that anymore. I don't think people even open those kinds of emails anymore.
No, I mean, that's hugely disrespectful. And on a daily basis, I get emails offering me all kinds of stuff, often search engine optimization or a better website. And if they don't even mention my name, I just delete them. If they have bothered to understand who this person is at the other end and say, "Dear David," I might just politely respond saying, "No, thank you." So, yeah, I think it's the time and effort that people put in that is respected. And I think people understand that when it comes to a handwritten Christmas card, but also at the arts and crafts end of things. I think that's another appeal of handmade objects, handmade rather than batch made, individual things. That's, people realize that there is time and effort and a personal touch, and it has something of the same appeal. So I think the world is going digital, but not everything is digital. And perhaps we value, in some senses, those non-digital items, products that, and services and relationships, as we talked about before. So that's one observation.
Yeah, I agree completely. I think that as we go digital, the more that we value these non-digital things, and we see them as, a really good point in somebody's business or just in life as friends. I still remember a friend that still writes down her notes in a notebook. She doesn't use her laptop for anything. So I think those kinds of things stand out very much, especially when it comes to business. So I would totally agree with you on that with you, David. So David, please tell our audience if they're more interested in what you have to share about all of what we talked about today and more, where could our viewers find you online in the digital world?
Yeah, in the digital world, simply go to my website, which is davidparrish.com.
We'll link it below.
And you will find, everything about me, my personal story. You'll find my products, my books, lots of articles I've written about creative entrepreneurship, videos. Some of my speeches are there in video format, all kinds of stuff about creative entrepreneurship and what I do and how I can help you to become more successful by combining your creative talents with smarter business thinking to achieve the success that you want. So it's all there on my website, including my 2 books, which you can buy in ebook format or paperback or audiobook formats. All the links are there. You can find them, have a look at them. One of them is actually free to download as an ebook in English. And yeah, the other one isn't free. You can buy that. And of course, the audiobooks you have to pay for, and the
Well,
paperback.
thank you, David, for letting the people that are interested so how they can easily find you. And thank you so much for your time today. I really appreciate it. I learned so much from you about the creative industry and the creative industry in the online world. I'm sure that our audience will also learn a lot from today's conversation. Thank you so much. Appreciate it.
You're welcome. My pleasure.
Thank you, David. We hope you enjoyed today's episode. Make sure that you subscribe to our YouTube channel and follow us on social media.